Mm. Hello all. Hello all. No, session has not started yet. Am I visible? Give me a minute. Nothing. Am I visible and am I audible? Yes, visible. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, we'll wait for two more minutes so people actually will join. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Mm. Good evening, everyone. Uh, yes, Ramakrishna. Thoughts on NxtJS? Um, I think it is much more proficient than React in many levels. Fine. Good evening, everyone. Yes, yes. Miss Aravamsi, yes. Actually, I teach about state management, how actually state is managed, and also you learn about what is meant by React. How do we deal with the React in order to write beautiful state management thing? TypeScript, TypeScript. Hussein Khan, go with TypeScript, not with jQuery. jQuery, some people are actually asking, but fine. Yes, we are using hooks. We are using hooks. So this is a complete end-to-end React thing where we also learn about few testing methods and also you'll deploy your application. So yeah, I'm fine, Pawan. How are you? Yes, latest versions of React has been released. Yes, we'll go to the React compiler, but in this given session, we try to understand what exactly React is solving. Why everyone is behind React? What is that one speciality that React brings in compared to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in the front end space? Yeah, this is the first sprint session, Nani. Pawan Nani, this is the first thing. So, Okay, we'll wait for 2 more minutes so that people actually will join. Chetan, we'll be learning about why the React has been existing in the current place itself. That's a crucial point one must be focusing upon. Why do we require even the React part? Why React has been evolved? Yes, yes, Dinesh. Actually, uh, yeah, I know about it. I'm a pen tester and also a part of a red team. Yes, we will learn about Redux, Vamsi. We will learn about Redux. But before going to React, Redux, and other stuff, let's try to understand why do we actually require this React or any other kind of a framework. That's very quintessential before going into the hands-on part of the React. Um, Sayed, I don't think so because it still require many of the developer interactivity. So yeah, yes, I participated in many of such things. What is React hooks? Do not worry, Sanjay. At this point of time, let's try to understand the step-by-step approach of how we are actually learning React and why do we actually learn React. Online, though, I don't believe. Instead, you can go for cloud. Hussein, you can go for cloud. React versus Angular. Okay, that's an interesting question. Probably both have their own advantages and disadvantages, which is nothing but React is more of easy way to handle a complex things in the front end, but coming to this Angular, it is more of structured way. So once if you're habituated to it of the Angular part, it is more of structured way. And coming back to React again will take actually time because React takes bit of effort to keep it more structured. Angular by itself it is structured thing. So yeah, I like both of them. But before understanding what how and how the React actually works is very crucial important before going to the front end because without even there is this one joke. This is nothing but people who are front end engineers who will say, "Sir, I am a React developer," doesn't know JavaScript, how it works. So without understanding all of them, and you're trying to learn to be React using hooks, state management, Redux, and every other stuff, it would be a joke. So I don't want my students to be a part of this joke. So that's why I just want to teach each and every crucial aspect of from why the React has been created and how it actually works. That's my main agenda for this entire session. PK, yes. You'll also learn about how to create a custom hook. Yes, there is a chance that we can create a custom hook. But remember, custom hooks creation is just 2 minute thing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Until unless you're building a very, very, very complex thing, you don't require custom hooks. Vue is like another framework, so it has its own advantages. Sir, did you created any online courses separately? No, but I actually teach in the part-time thing. So yeah, basically I used to teach the very advanced thing for people who approach me. So that's the thing. So wait, React is a framework. Yes, both are same, Chandu. React is actually a framework and a library. So there's a lot of difference between library and a framework, but yes, React can uh, hold both of them together. That's the advantage of React. My LinkedIn ID Nitin Sandilya Bhagavatala, which is where I'll type Nitin Sandilya Bhagavatula. This is my LinkedIn ID. Yes, is it a Google generated answer, Miss Alomsi, or is it a ChatGPT generated answer? Because instead of just calling it a JavaScript library, because there are many other JavaScript libraries similar to React. So, but React is completely different than the library of JavaScript. It started as a library of JavaScript, but currently it is not a JavaScript library. It is much more than that. React Native also same as React.js. React Native is only for mobile development. No, Hussein Khan, React Native is not the best for mobile development. It has its own advantages, but people now are more focusing upon Flutter. Flutter is very good. It's good for cross-platform things, for cross-platform app development. Like for both Android and iOS, we can develop one Flutter application that would work both on both of these platforms successfully. Yes, we'll come to this Shahid, what is meant by SSR and SSE. We'll come to it. Do not worry about it. So easy. I think it's easy. So don't worry about it. Programming fundamentals are same for in any given language. It's same for in any given language. So yeah. Uh, any more general questions, or can we start our session? If you want me to start our session, I'll just go ahead and I'll start the thing. That's actually good, Dinesh. That's actually a good thing, Dinesh. Yes, one start. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So let's start our session, for which I'll say go to this thing known as, like, I'll say replit.com. So for the sake of understanding a replit, I just create one replit. Okay, unloaded replit. It is asking me. Okay, replit is now asking me because public storage repls have been now created. No doubt. So let's try to log in. Continue to reproduce. Continue in Google. So at this point of time, give me a minute. I'll just finish out this thing. So okay. Yes, now everything is fine. So have it is. I think it is very tough for me, Ramakrishna, to write the notes while explaining the stuff, but I'll try to do it. I'll try to give this recording to you so that it will be very helpful for you. Does AI replace? Not now, PK, not now, because it's way more complex to replace a developer. Yes, Hussein Khan, first before understanding how the interviewer actually start asking the questions, let's try to understand what are the different things that are actually present in React, how the React is made, and after that we'll go ahead and learn what are the interview tactics that we need to learn. So that would be an efficient way or approach to learn React. Yep. So we'll go ahead. Yes. So continue. Sorry, please. So person use. Okay. Got a starter. Okay. Try to create a REPL. So I'll try to create an HTML JavaScript remote. It's a reconciliation. Reconciliation create a REPL. So yes. Next review. Okay, let this thing get reloaded. So yes, it's been done now. Yes, everyone can see my screen clearly, right? Everyone can see my screen clearly. This screen. If yes, please respond yes in the chat. So we'll go ahead and start our learning journey of React. Everyone can see my screen, right? This particular thing. Replit is one such an online code editor. So for this example or for this class session, we'll go ahead and we'll see how do we use it. I think today the session would be more of a lighter session only, not a heavy kind of a stuff. But yeah, I try to keep the things light because this is your first session. So I need to make sure your first sessions would actually look very normal. Yes, console log. Hi, sir. Hi, new scientist. Yes, yes, we will learn it together. We'll learn it together. Yes. Yeah, everyone can see this particular thing of uh, body where we have the hello world. So let's say we'll say that welcome to React Sprint. React Sprint. If I run the code, yes, I'm actually running the code. So wait, is not yet closed. Run the code. Okay, this is taking time to run the code. My memory is actually limited. Okay, fine. Now welcome to the React Sprint. So in this given particular React Sprint, you actually learn about what is and why do we require React. From that point to actually go and deploy our first React application. So probably if everything works fine, we try to do this particular React thing, React, application deployment in AWS. If everything, even the time actually permits. So yes, yeah. Before going to this React, let's try to understand this concept of why or how I can say, let's try to understand how the front end development used to be before 2014. Before 2014, this is very much crucial and an important thing. So before 2014, the things that used to be done is that using this thing known as, where this is your HTML, where we have this particular thing. Let's say if I want to create an element, let's say let h2 is actually equal to document dot create element, where I'll say the element need to be h2, and after creating this given element h2, I'll say that yes, h2 dot inner HTML. Let's say I just want to include this given particular thing known as how are you doing now? How are you doing now? And I'll say um, document dot body dot append child of h2. So let's say if I try to run this given particular code, where here in the above code I am trying to include the JavaScript or include HTML using JavaScript variables. So if I run the code and if I say reload the body, now I can clearly see that how are you doing now? How are you doing now? So here in this given particular thing, I have actually created an h2 element using this particular thing known as document.create element, where create element is one such a function that is given by the environment browser itself for us to create an h2 element, h2 heading to element. And this inner HTML is one such a attribute for this given h2 element, where we can add any number of any kind of a thing, which is nothing but, let's say if I given go to this particular thing, I click inspect. Wait a minute. Okay, it is not. Okay, it does consist of many other things, but coming to this body element where we have our let's close this body element and let's try to understand the body. Okay, this is much bit absurd with this stuff, but yes, it is fine. Where we have this body tag, yes, but if you observe this particular thing of index.html here, I'll try to move this particular thing. If you observe this index.html, we only have these, h1 tag. We only have this given h1 tag, but using this JavaScript code, I have included this h2 tag. How are you doing now? Using this thing known as JavaScript. So how am I able to do this kind of things, right? Using DOM manipulation, which is nothing but manipulation, where using JavaScript we can manipulate the DOM. But what exactly is meant by DOM is that, let's try to understand DOM here. So DOM is actually known as document object model, where here we are manipulating or changing the HTML structure, HTML of a web page using JavaScript, which is nothing but when your particular I can say that when your web page is actually loading on the thing, when your web page is actually loading, when this given particular web page is actually loading into the server, I can say that not into the server, to be more precise, into the browser, the browser itself creates a DOM tree. The browser creates a DOM tree where the actions goes like this, in this given way, where firstly the rendering of different HTML elements is done. Simultaneously the DOM tree construction The DOM tree construction also started also created, which is nothing but whenever you see this given HTML code is actually being applied onto the screen, at the same time on I can say the browser actually creates this kind of a DOM tree. DOM tree is nothing but where this DOM tree is nothing but the uh, tree structure of HTML that we have written, which is nothing but, let's say if you observe this given HTML code, I'll try to bring it back at this given point of time. If you have this observe this given HTML code, now this DOM tree of this given particular HTML actually look in this format, which is nothing but, first there will be creation of one document element, which is actually known as forwarding this given particular thing, where I can show it as Excelidra. I think I have downloaded Excelidra. Yes, Excelidra. So let's try to run this particular thing, where whenever we have a certain HTML code, first the DOM tree will be constructed in this format. First we have our document, which is the head document, which I'll say wait a minute. This is document, and we also have inside of this document, it is actually created two parts. This is actually a rough diagram I am actually using to tell this or explain this concept of DOM. So the DOM tree in reality has many more layers. Okay, so let's say I'll say where for this one thing we have another, this particular thing is of head and this is of body. And inside body and inside head element, if you mention any kind of thing, let's say if it has more number of I can say more number of link elements or script elements, it would look like this, link elements. So then that link elements would be multiplied. Let's say if it has, the head element has 3 link elements, then these are its children. So these are its children. Similarly, inside the body tag, if the body tag has many such HTML elements like h1, similarly h1, h2, and like in this given example we have these two different elements that are actually present, so I'm actually considering them these two values. So yeah, h1, h2. Now if you observe this DOM tree or DOM object, these all nodes, to be more precise, all nodes in, I can say that, wait a minute, all nodes in the tree are objects in JavaScript, which is nothing but, here each of this individual circle, where some people might be confusing what are nodes, here in this given particular tree structure, each circle is a node. So each circle here which we are currently seeing on this given tree is actually a node. So there is a relationship between parent and children relationship, which is nothing but, between each node we have parent and child relationship, which is nothing but, document is parent for all the elements here. Head is the parent element for these 3 link elements, and body is the parent element for this h1 and h2. For any given HTML code that you write, any given HTML element that you write, this is the same format. That actually happens. Now, one advantage of this JavaScript is that we can actually manipulate this entire tree using its code. So to be more precise, using its variables. If you observe here, I have created a JavaScript variable where here, wait a minute, h2 is actually a JavaScript variable. h2 is JavaScript variable. Using this given particular variable, we are actually including, we are actually creating this element h2, and we are actually adding some content, and after adding the content, we are actually adding this entire h2 element inside this particular thing known as body tag, a body tag. So we are actually manipulating this concept of DOM using this thing known as a JavaScript. That's what meant by DOM manipulation. So till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? Yes, it is an online compiler, by the way. Till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? If no, say yes. We'll go ahead. Nine. No doubts. No doubts. No doubts. Clear. 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 Go ahead. Thank you. So, on a simpler note, I can tell. On a simpler note, on a short note, I can say. Short note. The HTML or the HTML we are writing in the code which is visible onto the screen is nothing but a JavaScript variable, JavaScript object. We all know that in given JavaScript, let's say we have an object like this. Let's take this example. Why I want to give justification for this given particular line. Why everything that is rendered onto the screen is actually JavaScript object? Because let's take this given object. To understand this example, let's take this given object where this object has this name NxtWave, where it has positions or work, or I can say work mission, upskilling the youth of nation. Pros, what are the pros or what are the features of this given company? Let's say I'll say classes. I can say that training happens in multiple ways. I can say in regional languages. So let's say I have created this kind of an object. Now, I can say that to access either of the above properties in the object, we can use the we can use the dot notation. Which is nothing but, if I can say alert obj dot name. So this particular thing, if I run the code, okay, I'm running the code. Now let's try to reload the code. Okay, now it is asking me that, it is showing me that NxtWave. Okay. So here, to access any other property in JavaScript, we use this thing known as a dot notation. Similarly, observe the above code where we are trying to manipulate the DOM. So we have our document object where it has a function or it has a method create element. Using that, we are actually creating the elements h1, h2, any kind of an element, right? So once we create such kind of an elements, we're actually including some data into it, where this dot h2 dot inner dot html, which is nothing but, we can say that it would actually look like this. So h2 is one such an object. Now it has many other properties, like inner html is one such a property waiting for answer. Similarly, it has this particular thing known as create element. Inner text is one such a property. It has also waiting element. Now h2 is kind of an object. This h2 that we are creating is kind of an object where it has these properties: inner html, inner text, and many other many. And using that inner html, we are actually assigning some value, which is called how are you doing now. And after assigning, we are currently appending this thing. Appending is nothing but, appending is one such an operation, adding the element h2, adding the element h2 to the body element, to the body element, to the body element, right? So this is what we are actually using, nothing but, where on a short note we can tell what are HTML that we are writing, which is actually rendering onto the screen. The browser actually renders each and every other thing onto the screen as a JavaScript object. That is a fundamental way or fundamental understanding that we got using this DOM manipulation. Till now everyone clear? Till now everyone clear? Because this is crucial point, because understanding this crucial point helps you a lot when you learn the React or any other framework. Because everything that we see on the screen is actually nothing but a JavaScript object. Simple, straightforward. Yes, we can use any node to insert a new element into it. So till this point, if you have any kind of a doubt, because it's very much crucial element to understand. We'll come to that particular thing, Dinesh. We'll come to the particular, but understand this given particular property. Repeat. Okay, Sanjay, may I know what is your doubt, or till which point, from which point you want me to repeat? Sanjay? Yes, Nisi, there is a quite a less difference between both of inner HTML and inner text, but at this point of time, do not worry about it. How everything is a JavaScript object. If you observe in the JavaScript, I have created one object and it has few properties: name, mission, features, and sort of a thing. Similarly, to access any of the properties, I use this dot notation. This is the syntax. If you observe the same code, I am using this dot notation to access methods, to access these methods. Let's say, to give any kind of a property there its value, I am actually using this dot notation, h2.html, inner HTML. Document.create element, it is actually a method. Let's say if this given particular object is having this, one function, let's say I say that can I get admission. So this is one such a property where I'll write one such a simple code where I'll say let you are selected in NxtWave. Now, so where if I say instead of name and sort of a thing, if I simply say this given particular thing to be can I get admission in this given particular format, and if I run the code and if I reload the code, you can clearly see that yes, you are selected for NxtWave in the code. So yes, fine. Yeah, if you observe this given particular one simple statement where for this given object we have a method can I get admission now. Similarly, for this given document object we have this thing known as an particular function, particular method create element, and body is one such an another object where it has this append child is one such an method that is actually present for this given particular object, and we are accessing these methods and these properties using this thing known as a dot notation. So where for this JavaScript object, we are actually we can say that every HTML that is rendered onto the screen is actually done or being used by this JavaScript as an object itself. So that's why I told that every HTML element that is rendering on the screen is nothing but a JavaScript object, because we use this dot notation to manipulate the DOM tree itself. So DOM tree is nothing but structure of your entire HTML code. So using this dot notation sort of thing, because each of this node in the given DOM tree is actually an object and each have its own functions, methods and properties. So we are actually trying to manipulate the DOM using these methods and properties that are given by the browser itself. Browser is kind of an environment. So that's why I've told that objects or every HTML element that is actually rendering onto the screen is actually nothing but a JavaScript object. So am I clear? If clear, tell me go sir. Clear. Go ahead. Tell me go ahead if everything is clear. Because this is the fundamental way of understanding how the JavaScript actually helps you to manipulate these things on this thing. Yes, clear. Now let's go ahead. So this is the conclusion that I have made. Now going ahead, let's say I'll try to remove it. That's fine. So if I remove it, yes, you can clearly see that this given particular h2 has been removed, because in JavaScript code I am not writing any kind of a thing. Give me a minute. There is this kind of small notification for me. So yeah, now go ahead. Yes. Now coming to this point of the reconciliation. So previously, let's take a simple example. Let's say parent element. I'll create one such a parent element, and I'll say document dot or else I'll go to this index.html and I'll create one such a simple element. I'll say this thing as a div element where it has ID, which is actually known as parent element, or I can say main area. So yeah, if I'll say document dot get element by ID is one such a method where we can fetch elements using their IDs. So I'll say that main area, main area. So this above operation actually helps us to get the div element with ID is equal to main dash area, with ID is equal to main dash area, this ID. So yeah, this helps us to get this div element with ID main dash area. This is our primary thing that we are actually going to hit. Now let's say if I want to make sure I just want to add some other elements inside this given particular div element, which is nothing but using this simple DOM operation. Okay, using this simple very normal DOM operation. Let's say if I want to include I can say a child element. I'll say var child element I'll say that document dot wait a minute, document dot um, create element is create element element. I'll create a div element where inside this given particular div element where we have you know various other things. Let's try to do this particular thing where I'll actually create okay, fine, let's actually create, or let's try to fill out this particular given div element with this one simple logic where at this given particular thing um, I'll create one simple span element. Let's say I'll call it as grandparent or grandchild element where I'll say document dot create element given particular thing known as I'll create a span element. Where for this given particular span element I'll try to add some kind of a text, which is nothing but I'll say grand dot inner html, grandchildren element dot inner html should be value equals to hello world. And now I'll do this one important thing where I'll say that first I'll include this grandchild element into this div element. So for that I'll say that child element child element dot append child. I'll say grandchild element, and after appending it, which is nothing but here, this appending is nothing but we are adding this span element inside the div element. Now inside this given div element, now we need to add the div element into the parent element. So at this given point of time I'll do this one simple action where I'll say parent element dot append child. To be more precise, I'll say that child element. Now let's try to run the code. Okay, now you can clearly see this is hello world. So this is one simple DOM thing I just included into this particular thing known as an HTML code. Let's try to make this more complicated, where I just want to add three grandchildren elements into this given div element, and we need to add this given div element into this parent element. So for that I'll take this loop. I'll remove entire things. So let's say I'll say where I is actually equals to the value of 0, which is nothing but I less than of let's say data dot length gth, where I'll say it's not data view but it is of data. It is data dot length, and I'll say I plus. So at this given point of time let's try to create this thing known as where child element. I'll give this thing known as document dot create element create an element of div element, and inside this given div element I want to just create a grandchild element, where at this given point of time I'll say document dot this is something document dot create element. I'll say this is actually span. So I'll say grandchild element dot inner HTML should be actually equals to data dot I dot title. So do not worry, I am actually including actually creating a such simple array of element of data where this even at every other point of time this data array will be flooded with this thing known as div element and span element. So instead I'll keep spaces between them so it would be very easy for you. So wait. Now let's say I also want to create another grandchild element of this particular thing, element 2. I am again creating another span element where for this I'll say that grandchild element 2, which is nothing but this element inner HTML value should be it's of description. Finally, I just want to say that wait a minute. Let's say I just want to create another grandchild element 3, which is a button element. I just want to create whenever I just click say delete, I just want to delete these things. Just want to delete these things. So first I just need to include this child element dot append child. This is append child. Append child. I'll say grand element. This is the grand element. Similarly, chained element append child. I'll say I just want to say grand element 2. Similarly, we have this chained element dot append child. We'll say grand element 3. Now finally I just want to include all of them into this one single thing known as parent element. So I'll say parent dot or parent element dot append child, where I just want to append this thing known as child element. Now if I run the code, now wait, any kind of a thing or any kind of a mistake that we made, data is not defined. Oh, okay, fine. Data is not defined. So let's say data is not defined. Okay, let's try to data is not defined. Fine. Let's try to give this value as 3. Let's give the value as 4. So this particular thing known as .html element to be hello, and this description I just want to give this thing known as do the no I can say go and eat nutrition breakfast. Eat nutrition breakfast. I think everything is done. Now run the code. If you observe that with this one given thing, I have included these three elements where I'll just remove this entire line. I'll try to remove this entire line and try to reload the code. Yes. Now if you observe that within this simple where I can say I have created a simple DOM element where using this DOM manipulation I have included few text and also a button but I have did this thing for 4 times. Assume I'll say that this given particular thing or this given particular thing, let's say if I say window dot set interval, if I say this given entire thing, I try to keep this entire thing in one such a function. So I'll keep this entire thing inside a given function. Wait, where I'll try to write a function, I'll keep it as entire function because this is very much crucial on how the React actually works. So I'll say the function name is create DOM element elements, create a DOM elements, where I'll say this itself would be sufficient to explain this entire DOM element. Function spelling is wrong. Oh, come on, cancel. Yeah, this is actually a function where we're actually sending a particular wait a minute, let thing known as data, or instead of thing known as data, let's create this data as an empty object where instead of hello I'll say this one given particular thing, where this data has this one particular thing known as a title, and let's say it is of sample data. and I'll say this description is sample description. So for them, I'll replace this hello and sort of a thing with this thing known as data dot no title, and I'll say data dot description. So these are the two ways that I have done it. But let's say with this one simple I can say simple code of writing these things, where I can tell instead of writing this entire DOM here, I'll cut it. I'll cut this particular thing, where I'll say this has come to this thing known as data, where I can say so. Let's say I'll create a simple set interval function where I have this one simple wait a minute. So here at this given point of time, let's say if you run the code, you don't see them applying because we are not actually calling this particular thing. Let's say if I call this one particular thing known as DOM create element, and let's see how this thing actually works. Let's say window dot set interval, where for this given particular set interval I'll create one function, where this one given particular function, where I'll call this function create DOM element, where this particular given particular function or this given object has this thing known as title. I'll say go to walking, go to running, I say go to sprint sprint, and I'll say also say that description, where I'll say this is useful to learn React better than any other course. So these are the two things that I have created. Now let's say I just want to call this everything. I just want to call this given function for every 1 second. Run the code. Now observe the screen. Now it is showing that okay, some error had happened. Cannot read the properties of title. Okay, is this okay? So it is actually still running continuously and continuously. So where we have this one particular thing of okay, instead of giving the value of 4, I should have got data dot length, length. Okay, title. Title. Let's say we are actually trying to create here one to-do list. Let's try to replace it. Come on. Here. This thing actually, I just want to create it in a new tab. If you observe, this thing actually is being continuously running on this given particular replit thing. Now let's try to understand this one simple thing, where for every given 1 minute, let's try to include it one particular thing. Let's say let's try to revamp this code into a simple easy way of understanding, where I can say oh, wait a minute, why is it is showing me okay, let's try to do this thing. Let's try to comment it. So if you observe this given output, where for every given iteration, like for every 1 second, here we are actually trying to create these kind of a DOM elements. Previously, when there is no kind of such a React, even your Facebook and every other thing, here if you observe this append child is one such an operation where we are actually appending the things. Let's say I'll open this thing known as a LinkedIn. And okay, it is loading, give me a minute. check LinkedIn, open this LinkedIn, click on LinkedIn. It is asking me to sign in, but which I'll sign in. So wait a minute. So this is my LinkedIn wall. This is my LinkedIn wall where you have seen this bub is actually opening. Let's say I have this particular thing known as Taurus. When I open, whenever I'm opening this given message, there is this some content. So it is nothing but this append operation. This append operation where you have reading this particular given thing known as where you are actually seeing this append child, where we are actually including this grandchild element into this given particular child element, and finally we are including all these child elements into this thing known as a parent element, into this thing known as a parent element. So this is what actually happens even before 2014, where in order to see, let's say if I am closing here, this is nothing but there is this one option known as remove child, or remove child is one such an operation that actually carried out in any given website. So this is a pre-era of, I can say, till 2014. Any Facebook application, Yahoo, Google, Opera, any kind of an application used to do this kind of an append child and the other stuff, append child than the other stuff. Let's say I try to write this particular given function in much more appropriate way. Let's say if I'll say that window dot set interval, where I just want to dynamically get the things out of the things, which is nothing but, so let to do's, I'll create one such sort of an array, where I'll say for let I is actually equals to the value of 0, and I'll say I less than or equal to the value of math dot floor of math dot random, where I'll multiply this value to this thing known as 100, and I'll say I just want to compute this given particular thing to be I plus plus. There is this one such a file where I just want to say to do's dot push, where in this given particular thing I'll say title dot go to sprint, I'll say go to sprint, and I'll say description as this is better than the other sprint, and also give the id value as I plus plus. So after this given particular loop, I'll just come out of this given particular loop, and I'll try to give this particular thing known as create DOM element using this thing known as todos. So why I am telling this given important thing is, I'll explain it. First I'll explain that so that we can go back and revisit this given example. All the websites like Insta, LinkedIn, Amazon, Netflix are dynamic websites. Which is nothing but, if I open this LinkedIn, whenever I'm just scrolling, automatically the content is getting loaded. Onto the screen itself. How this is actually happening is that dynamic website, because the HTML is not pre-written. The HTML, when you're scrolling these things, this content, every other thing is not pre-written. This is coming from backend. Such that there is actually a server present at some other point of time. Whenever I'm opening my LinkedIn and I'm just scrolling randomly, the content is actually carrying out from backend to this given front end, and it is actually displaying it on the screen. So dynamic websites, I can say that on a simpler level, are such a websites where the content is actually give me a minute. I'll just connect to my charger. Yeah. Sorry for this slight inconvenience. Now, coming to this thing as a dynamic website, which is nothing but, let's say if I refresh it, if I refresh this given page, you can clearly see the content on the screen actually is getting loaded. Right? Even again, if I refresh it, the content actually happens. Even for any given dynamic application, let it be of Instagram, let it be of Amazon, Netflix, any kind of a thing, the information is actually getting from the backend. So the one crucial important that we need to understand is that we cannot write a hard-coded or pre-written HTML. Pre-written HTML is not at all possible for this given particular application because the content is actually dynamically loading onto the screen but not statically loading, which is nothing but, for the example of static web page, I'll go to this thing known as Wikipedia. So I'll click on it, Wikipedia. So I'll search for NxtWave. So yeah, NxtWave doesn't have this particular thing known as Wikipedia, but we can create one such a Wikipedia page. Let's say JavaScript library, open it. Now, how many times I refresh, the content is actually the same. How many times I refresh or do any kind of a thing, the content is actually the same. So this is actually known as a static website, but coming to this LinkedIn, it is actually a dynamic website. So one problem with the dynamic website is we cannot pre-write this HTML thing. So we use JavaScript variables. We use JavaScript given variables to create HTML. This is our main motto. That's why I have created one such a thing known as to-dos. To-dos is one such a list where I'm actually, creating, I have created an array where I'm going to store what are the different things that I'm going to, show it on the screen. And after that, I'm going to execute this given particular, what I can say, this particular data.length sort of a thing, where at this given particular point, if you observe the entire code, I'm actually sending all of these things, which I will repeat this particular thing. Let's say for every 1 second, I just want this thing to be executed. Let's try to reload the page. Yes. If you observe, this initial screening has been, included to this given particular, sort of a thing where after every given second, you can clearly see the content is actually uploading onto the screen. Let me scroll it down a bit, or else let's show it. If you observe, after every second, let me refresh it. Yes. See, this is the first content, second content, third content, and fourth content. So every time we observe that content is actually repeating this, just popping onto the screen itself and going ahead. So I just want to make one simple thing where inside this given particular thing, whenever we are actually including any sort of a thing, I'll say parent dot element, this thing of inner HTML, I'll just make it empty. And I'll go back and I'll reload the page. Right. So if you observe, for every given second, the content is actually dynamically loading onto the screen, loading directly onto the screen. If you observe, this is this given particular second, it is of 1, next few, and next there are a bunch. And if you observe this particular thing, this entire pattern where we are actually using this to-dos variable, where this is an object, to-do is an actually object, and these are the two properties that this to-do object have, where I am actually utilizing each of them to push into this particular thing known as a HTML using JavaScript variable. This concept of including HTML elements, this concept of including HTML using JS variables, to be more precise, variables, is actually known as state. State management. To be more precise, state. So we are actually seeing this state management sort of thing in Redux. It is nothing but, if you observe this given particular screen, at every given 1 second, using these JavaScript variables, we are actually trying to load the content itself, which is nothing but this concept where for every second we are actually doing one important thing, which is nothing but
whenever this given particular function is getting called, this given particular create DOM element function is actually called, wait a minute, sorry, then we are actually creating a parent element. We are actually creating the we have already the parent element main area. This main area, we have this thing, we are actually getting that into this particular JavaScript code, and after that we are actually removing entire content from the screen. Entire content from the screen, we are removing entire content thing, and then we are adding all of this content. We are adding all of this content onto the screen. So this is what meant by state, where here if you observe, using this one simple to-dos array and these title and description properties, which are nothing but the variables, I am actually controlling the content on the screen itself. See, after every 1 second the content is actually uploading, deleting, uploading, deleting, uploading, deleting, uploading and deleting. So this is the same habit of any given dynamic website. Go to any dynamic website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Netflix, any dynamic website, this is the one simple thing. Now, the one concept, which the crucial concept here is that to manage entire page or to manage content on the page, we are using JavaScript functions. So if you observe, there is this one function such as known as create DOM elements, where it is accepting some kind of a variable data, and using that data we are actually creating these variables. Now at this given point of time we have only one such a property, one such a variable. Let's say if I have these two things, let's say this, I have this one two things. Let's say if I have this another variable with some content, title, I'll say go to sprint of React. I'll tell you why React actually is utilizing or much more efficient in doing the stuff. So let's say I'll say description, where I'll tell you this particular description actually, okay, is there any wrong? No, nothing. So this is useful. This is a simple thing. This is a useful, and that's it. And we have these two objects. Where I'll say apart from these things, I also have this ID element. I'll give the value of 2. This is a hard-coded value that I want to give. Now, this to-dos is one such an JavaScript variable where it has two different kind of things, two different objects. Where if I include the same thing, now there is if you observe these two things, let's try to run the code and see how it actually happens. It is time to get the object itself, but no problem. Okay, it's taking time to reload, but anyway we'll go ahead explaining this stuff. So let's try to run here. Okay, argument is actually missing. Which argument is actually missing? Yes. Now if you observe this particular thing, okay, I need to reload it. Okay. If you observe, we have go to this sprint. This is very useful to learn React better than any other course. Is one such a thing that is actually implementing this screen. And also we have this second thing, go to the sprint of React. If you observe, go to the sprint of React, it is actually, this is useful. So here I am using the JavaScript variable to actually include these differences that are actually currently happening in the code itself, which is nothing but dynamically I am changing the things. If you observe this first thing and the second thing, there is only simple change. In the first thing title we have this go to sprint, in the second title we have this go to sprint to React. So there is this simple change. So this title is one such a variable where state actually happens in this way. Instead of removing this entire go to sprint, we are actually including this one single thing. Which is entirely controlled by this given particular thing known as a function, which is a function known as create DOM element. Now we are actually managing the content on the page using the JS functions. It is actually known as reconciliation. Right? So this is what meant by reconciliation. Using these simple terms, like using this simple function like this, create DOM element, I am actually updating the content randomly onto my screen. So this one simple thing that actually is done by the React itself. So we have written a mini React library. React actually do the same thing. Where we have two elements. That needs to be rendered onto the screen, and here we are approaching this thing that okay, whenever this function is called, remove whatever things that are actually present on the screen and then include these two elements onto the screen. This is what we are doing, but React does it in more efficient way, which is nothing but, if you observe this title and description, where for these given two objects, the first title is go to sprint and the second title is go to sprint of React. So there is this small change. In this one simple variable, or this one simple state. So these are actually tracked by the React. That is the use of the React. So that's why we are actually trying very hard to write this given particular thing in order to implement any kind of a dynamic loading onto the screen. But this entire thing is actually implemented by the React. This entire thing what you have just seen in this code is actually implemented by the React. That is the use of React, which is nothing but, if anyone says this thing known as state in React, it is nothing but the simple variable changes. React actually focuses upon these single statements, where if there is a change detected, it actually uploads this particular thing of DOM. That is the advantage of React. That's what meant by state. We all know what is meant by state and use state and other stuff, but what exactly it is used for is for this simple thing. If you observe this continuously, this given particular statement is actually running and running and running and running and running. Let's say if I change this particular sprint of React to sprint of Angular, this is very useful for getting job. And if I run the code again, you can clearly see, go to the sprint. Okay, instead I'll give 10 seconds. This is very fastly reloading and updating this content on the screen. So let's wait for 10 seconds. This one should execute. Wait for 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, it actually executed. It is saying that go to this sprint. This is useful to learn React better than any other course. And also you'll see, go to the sprint of Angular. This is very useful for getting a job. So now we are rendering just two elements onto the screen itself, using this thing known as a variables, using this thing known as a states, to be more precise. Right? After 10 seconds, you see again the content is changing, similar to this dynamic website. So we are all doing this changes onto this particular statement or changes onto this particular web page using this one simple function, using this one simple JavaScript function. That concept is actually known as reconciliation. So here we have actually tried to actually include these kind of and content onto the screen using append and append child. We also have, or we can also use remove child sort of a function, but at this point of time it is not required. That's why I'm not using any kind of a remove child for this particular explanation. But the fundamental thing is, using this one simple function, we are actually creating these elements onto the screen, where this to-dos is one such a variable or an array where it has title and descriptions, which are nothing but the states, as this reconciliation or this function actually looking upon these particular two, title and description, and if there is any change that is actually happening, it is actually printing onto the screen itself. So this is nothing but a simple React, a kind of a React application, kind of a React library that we have tried to write on our own in JavaScript. This is what the React does. So till this point, if you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Okay, Ramakrishna, is this still boring? If you kind of have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Because this is how the, including the elements, removing the elements, including the elements, removing the elements, that actually happens dynamically for this one single library of React. So we have written a similar kind of React application, like the reconciliation, which we have written in this previous thing, which is known as create DOM element. So we have did it. By the way, Ramakrishna, learning is actually boring. Learning is actually boring. Any kind of a doubt? If no doubt, you can tell me. Go ahead. I'll go ahead. Um, am I audible? Yes, you can write the text content also, but inner HTML is actually a correct way of writing the things. Text content is for one layer, inner HTML is for altogether a deeper layer. That's why I'm using inner HTML. Are you guys present in this thing? I think is the live going on? Going ahead. Go ahead. Anything I just want to mention, like how the React manages this one single thing known as a state, how this entire thing of work actually happens of dynamically loading onto the content onto the screen, removing the content all at once is managed by this particular thing known as a state, and how this one single function actually dealing with this content that is actually showing on the screen. So everything comes under this particular thing known as a reconciliation. So previously, every other website used to write these kind of append, remove, and sort of a complex JavaScript code altogether. Thing in just JavaScript code that we have written, just simple code. But the major disadvantage is it is super complex to manage all of these things. So here, this title is one such a particular state, and description is another particular state, where we are actually managing by our own, code that we have written. But assume for a complex website, there would be thousands of such variables we need to manage. So that thing is actually taken care of by the React. So React, while doing with this React, we only want to think about two things. One is about the state, other one is about the component. That's it. We're done. Majority of the times we just revolve every other thing between these two, state and component, because all the remaining hard work will be done by this thing known as a React. React is a framework library, Madhusudan. We haven't created any React app, right? But we have created the React framework itself. Here, the code which we have written, it is a kind of a React. What React exactly doing? I have implemented this entire, React thing here itself. So the difference between React and JS is JavaScript is actually the programming or else a scripting language, to be more precise. React is nothing but a library framework that helps us to do majority of the things instead of complicating the things. So how many people actually understood this concept? Or if you want me to repeat, I'll repeat, because this is very much crucial to understand. That's why I'm asking again and again. Responses, please. Pawan Kumar, I'll tell about what is the difference between between framework and library tomorrow. Tomorrow is the right time to talk about the library framework, what is the advantages of React, and many other things. Yes. Using these simple variables, we are actually updating the content. That's our states. So React also does the same thing, but in a much more complex way. It is too complex way. It is like it's the brilliant piece of work they have did. So any kind of a doubt, any kind of a thing, we build in this sprint with React. Okay, Nani, we'll build a shopping cart where we try to include all of these functionalities of state management using Redux, what is meant by Redux, and also you'll see what are the different APIs that we're going to use for this particular thing known as building a complex website. In between, you also understand about what and how the React actually communicate with different components altogether. Everything you learn by building an e-commerce website. Um, any kind of a doubt? Like if you have any kind of a doubt, even if you want me to repeat, I'll repeat. If no, I have 5 minutes of thing to explain. After that, we are set with this session. Why did you use loop, sir? Nisi, may I know in which loop this particular for loop or this particular thing known as this loop? Fetch is a kind of an API. Yes and no, both answers work. Okay, Madhusudan, what is that you are feeling confused? What is the point of your confusion? So that I'll explain your confusion. I'll sort your confusion. Don't worry about it. So Madhusudan, can you point out what's your confusion? Video is buffering. I think my video is now at a good quality. I can say that it is actually in a good quality. Yes, the correction is also doing this entire stuff properly and prominently. So no problem. Okay, so coming to this thing where this for loop is actually utilized to create these kind of an elements for the objects or for the things that are actually present. Here the two things are present, so we are going to create two chains. One is nothing but go to this sprint of of learn to react and sort of thing, and other one is go to this sprint of angular. This is very useful for getting job. These are the two objects that I am just actually creating dynamically there in the itself. For that we are actually using this particular you know for this given particular variable to create the elements in the DOM itself. Coming to this thing of second for loop, where I'm actually going to this particular thing, or where I'm just actually including elements into this particular given to-dos. To-dos is an array where I'm including these elements into this to-dos simultaneously. So for that to add different elements into this array of to-dos, I'm using this given internal for loop. So Madhusudan, like, can you tell me what is actually getting confused? What is more confusing? Because I just want to know. Like, how many felt this is very confusing? If you're feeling very confusing, I'll try to elaborate it in very easy way. Uh, while using loops and to-dos, Madhusudan, can you be more clear which loop you are actually trying? Do you want me to explain what is meant by to-dos and why it is working? Why are we doing it? Programming money, why the out will come in one-on-one? What does it even mean? One after the other? Are you meant by? So Madhusudan, the first loop is actually used for creating a simple, elements onto this HTML. The second loop is nothing but identifying what are the different elements that I need to include onto the screen. Two elements. So why the output will come one on one after the other? Yes, tech with Dishant, it actually happens. So it is nothing but you need to have more practice. Your problem will be solved. Okay, Madhusudan is nothing but the outer for loop. This outer for loop is used to create these elements, these different elements onto the screen. Because we have two elements, right? If you observe, I have two elements. I have two elements. These two elements should be rendered on the screen. For that, I have written this for loop. This particular for loop inside this given function. But coming to this particular thing known as this for loop in to-dos. This for loop where here I am actually adding these two things. So sorry, I'm actually adding these two things into this given array of to-dos. Let's say if this particular thing I'm here, I'm having two objects. If you observe, I'm having here two objects. Assume if I have 100 objects, then I cannot write all of this 100 into this given to-dos. That's why I'm using for loop where at given instance this particular thing will be included into this to-dos. This particular thing will be included into the to-dos. That's how the thing happens. That's why I have written two for loops. Okay, I'm running the code once again. Fine. Yes, Saipon, exactly. In React, the state is like to-do object here. Here, to-do is nothing but a state. Title, description are nothing but state. That we are actually focusing upon to update on the screen itself. Every time after 10 seconds, I am updating these things on the screen. So after 10, wait for 10 seconds, this entire content will be reduced to some other thing. Let's say here, let's say in this given particular example, it is loaded for at least 12 to 13 times. But after 10 seconds, you will see this will be loaded to 10 times or 12 times. That's it. So every time the content is actually loading onto the screen. That's why using this help of this to-do object. To-do is also known as state. How the output is deleting? Very good question. If you observe, where we are actually making sure this inner HTML of parent element, this entire div element, every time this function is getting called, I am making sure everything that is present inside this parent element, here the parent element is nothing but this div. Inside this given div element will be deleted, will be make sure as empty string, will be nothing but will be deleted using this one single thing. I am making sure this happens. That's why deleting actually happens. Is your doubt clear, Madhusudan? One on another. Why the output is one on another is nothing but first this particular thing actually happens where index.html may we have this one h1 element, but if you observe the script.js where we have our code which executes for every 10 seconds, that's why we see this code or this content applying or changing for every 10 seconds. If I reduce this 10 seconds to the value of 5 seconds, it would be looking like this. You run the code, for every 5 seconds the content actually loads, gets deleted, loads again, gets deleted, loads again, gets deleted. Now this is the 5 seconds. After 5 seconds you will see the content might increase or may decrease. After 5 seconds you can see the content is actually being increased. Now let's wait for another 5 seconds. Yes, now again still the content is actually increased, sorry. Now again the content has been decreased. How it is deleted automatically? See here in this given to-dos or in this given particular thing known as set interval. Set interval is one such a function where for every 5 seconds the entire internal thing actually executes. Which is nothing but here there is this thing known as a function call. Where this create DOM element function is being called for every 5 seconds, and in this given function create DOM element we have our parent element that we are getting using this get element by id, and after getting this element which is nothing but here this given div element, we are actually removing all the content from the parent element. We can see parent element dot inner HTML, make it empty. So we are actually making empty that is actually present onto the screen. That's why it is automatically getting deleted for every other time. Automatically getting deleted for every other iteration. Any doubts? I'll explain. Actually this Sanjay, what exactly happens? This deletion. If I keep in for loop, parent elements will be created, but again elements will be deleted, which is nothing but if I keep this same thing at the last line, now the consequence is till line 22 elements will be created onto the screen, but on line 23 the created elements will be deleted. So there is no use of creating the elements and deleting the elements without actually showing it on the screen. So that's why I'm not writing this given particular thing of parent or deleting this given particular delete line inside this for loop. I am actually creating or actually using this, deleting this line outside the for loop, because whenever after every 5 seconds we know that this given particular DOM element function will be created or will be called, then automatically the content will be removed. So it is nothing but in just 5 minutes. In just 5 minutes, I can clearly see elements are getting created and deleted, created, deleted, created, deleted. If I keep the same thing in for loop itself, you don't see the creation. You will see deletion, but you don't observe the deletion also. You will see blank screen. You don't understand what exactly happens. That's the problem of it. That's why I didn't include it. That's what Madhusudan. If you write, if we can, yes, we can write this title and description. We can write this title and description. Come on. We can write this title and description. Okay, inside this HTML, we can write them. If we can say that, we'll say data.description. If we can say this entire thing is okay. Let's try to write it. Let's try to write it. Where I'll say this one single thing. Where instead I'll say di title. The similar structure will be followed. Let's say I'll copy the same thing. So where instead I'll tell this particular thing. Description. Oh, sorry, wrong things. Title and description. Let's try to implement this stuff. Or we'll say title and description \n. We'll say \n. Run the code. Okay. Wait for 5 seconds. Let it run on the code. Wait. Title, and this is the description. Let's say this new line is also not actually working, but anyway it's fine. If you see this title, I'll keep this title, description. Again run the code. You observe this particular thing known as after 5 seconds you'll see this title, go to this print, this is useful, go to the Angular, this is useful for job. Again after another 5 seconds we are actually imploding the content. So that's how we can include it. Achha, when we write in the start of the loop, it actually shows an error, Sanjay, because at this given point of time, this parent element, without declaration, in third line we are actually declaring the parent element. Without declaration, if you have parent element, it shows an error. but it has to be deleting the entire output once at a time. Need to be render the entire output once, but it is getting read some lines and some lines are remaining. That okay, next iteration. Okay, why so? Chendu Kalicity, you might be seeing that okay, some lines actually, like at this given point of time we have this output, but after some time you see the output actually remains same, but there is the content included. The one catch here you need to focus is the thing which you are seeing, that this delete operation actually happens in a split second, in a just split second. Let's say I'm just closing my eyes and opening my eyes. Let's say in just a blink, in a just blink of moment, the deletion and rendering actually happens. You don't recognize it, but actually deleting actually happens where entire screen will be deleted, then including the content happens. It is nothing like we have previous content, we again add something new to it. No, that is not happening. That logic doesn't have this. We simply delete it, we add it. Simply delete it, add it. But this actually happens at a faster pace that your eye cannot recognize it. Your eye cannot recognize it, and our eye thinks that okay, we are not deleting the content, but we are adding some new items to the content. But our logic is not that thing. We are actually deleting the entire content. So our eye cannot see it. But yes, that's a fact. Clear? Any kind of a doubt? Anyone any kind of a doubt? Anyone any kind of a doubt? If any doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, you can tell me. Go ahead. I'll go ahead. Any kind of a doubt, you can tell me. Otherwise, tell me. Go ahead. So the one important thing I just want to mention here is that where for every 5 seconds, we are actually including this, including this content into our DOM or into our web page using this particular thing known as a logic. But one very disadvantage is for every 5 seconds we are including this content into this DOM, but before including it, we are actually removing entire thing onto the screen, which is nothing but one, there is an update that we need to do on the screen itself. We are actually removing entire thing that is still present and re-adding the things again, which is nothing but I'll take this XLE drop where at given point, let's take this thing known as, we have 5 elements. We have this 5 elements. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. But so again, let's say after 5 elements we have 2 elements, simple 2 elements. We need to include 2 elements, or let's say we have 7 elements altogether. Let's take this thing where I'll create, let's say where we have this one simple thing of, let's say 7 elements. Wait a minute. 1, 2, third element, we have fourth element, fifth element, sixth element, and we have 7 elements. So at given, let's say 0 seconds, this is the case of, right, 0 seconds. So after 5 seconds, this is our case. This is our case.
Now I'm telling why this approach that we have written, the reconciler which we have written, is a very bad approach or very ugly way of writing the code. Is that I'll say we are updating the things. So we are deleting these 5 things. We are actually deleting these 5 things, and after 5 seconds we are updating this entire new thing, which is nothing but updating this entire new things. We are updating entire new 7 things. We are actually deleting this entire things, deleting this entire new things. I mean, deleting this entire kind of a things. So again we wait for another 5 minutes, another 5 seconds. Again we actually go and include these elements. So delete each and every, delete all the things and include the new elements. So this is the one worst way that we are actually doing. But instead let's say at this given 0 seconds, at this given 0 seconds, sorry, at this given 0 seconds, let's say we have these 5 elements, and after 5 seconds, if we have this 2 other extra elements, these 2 other extra elements, then we can simply add them. We can simply add these 2 here like this. We can simply add these 2 elements instead of deleting all the elements that are actually present on the screen. We can add these new 2 lines. We can add these new 2 lines. Similarly, if there is any kind of a deletion from these 7 lines to 3 lines, we can remove just 3 lines, right? That would be very effective way. So try to find out where you can make changes. Try to find out where you can actually make in this given changes, where instead of removing entire content that is actually rendered onto the screen, remove what are the things that are newly, add what are the things that are only newly added to the screen. So that is what React actually does. That is what React actually does. This is what which we have written is actually a ugly way of doing it, but React actually does it more beautifully, which is nothing but in this given example, at 0 seconds we have 5 elements on the screen, but after 5 seconds we have 7 elements on the screen. Now instead of removing all the 5 elements and in rendering 7 elements onto the screen is a waste of time and resource, and it costs a lot of browser resources. Instead of, we have these 5 elements, keep that 5 elements intact and include this 2 separate new elements into this given updated content, which is nothing but onto the screen. That is more effective and efficient way which React follows. Now for this given same function, tell me or do an assignment kind of a thing, for you, where we can change such that for every DOM operation, instead of deleting entire content, we actually add new content. So figure out that one thing like by yourself and try to go ahead, try to write such kind of a function. Window.setInterval. Okay, we can simply say that window is an browser object where it has one thing known as setInterval, which is nothing but for every 5 seconds, the code that is present inside here, will be executed. That is the work of setInterval, which is nothing but for every respective time, for every designated time, the code will actually be executed repeatedly. That is what meant by setInterval function. Window is nothing but this browser thing. You can also remove this window. You can always use remove this setInterval. We have a setInterval function. Run the code again. Wait for 5 seconds, sorry. See, so window.setInterval is kind of a notation, but Windows is nothing but window is nothing but a browser element. So don't worry, browser object, don't worry about it. Actually, it is really not exactly emptying the text. We can say that Chandu, that all the 5 elements will be thrown outside. After 5 seconds, every time we call the function, all the 5 elements or number of elements that are actually present on the screen will be thrown out. New elements will be created. That is the problem of this reconciliation. That's the problem of our reconciler that we have written. This is actually a simple reconciler that we have written, but I just want you to make changes such that just update the content or DOM element with simple things, not for multiple things. Yes, with just simple, whenever there is an update, include those many updates. Simple. That's what React actually does. So just try this kind of things in your home, and let's see. So that's it for this given session. If you have any kind of doubts, you can now ask me. I'm available. So if you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me.
Okay, but how do we update the new content? The new content that is generated by this for loop, how can we update that newly thing onto the screen itself? That is the question. But React, remember, this reconciliation is just a simple introduction because people before 2014 used to write all of this super complicated code. But React is one such a framework. It came forward, handled all of these kind of things for dynamic websites, and we just focus on state and component. That's it. Nothing more than that. React only focus on state and component. Simple. Everything it takes care. Sir, this is how content update takes place on the apps. Exactly. Exactly, new sentence. This is how the content actually takes place. Update on the screen. Whenever you see refresh on the Instagram screen, same process background may happening, and it updates on the screen. Simple. So that's it for this today's session. If you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'll open for doubts for 5 minutes. If you have any kind of any doubts, you can ask me. Yeah, if no doubts, you can leave the class. No doubts means you can leave the class. In which I'll wait for 5 minutes. So people who still have doubts will ask. And please give your honest feedback for this given sprint. If you like it, like it. If you want me to make any kind of changes in teaching style and any other thing, you ask me, I'll do it. And if you don't like the session, you can also mention it that you didn't like the session. It's fine, so that I can update myself. Math.random is nothing but it generates random numbers between 0 to 1. So there are infinite possibilities or infinite numbers between 0 and 1 number. So math.random will randomly create one random number. Random number between these 0 to 1. Any kind of doubts? Thank you, new scientists. Thank you. If you felt this session is actually um, good, thank you very much. Is your doubt clear, Nisi? Uh,
వైఫై అవ్వలేదు సార్. నన్ను విషయం పవన్ ఫోన్ చెప్పాలి కదా, నాకు డైలీ అవ్వలేదు.